Hello, my name is Shadi Gruesome. My test number is 7165. Today we're going to be doing an inspection on a 2013 Electric Glide and some things on a 2001 XR650R. Let's get started. The first thing I like to do is look at the VIN so I can look up any TSBs or recalls on the bike. I also want to make sure everything's okay with the customer before I get working on it. I also want to make sure that the license plate looks good and the current registration. Next thing I like to do is hop on the bike and make sure that the kickstand is working properly, since it's such an important part of the bike. It is working properly. We're now going to start the bike up, check engine lights, and make sure everything's working properly. We're going to look at our gauges, our oil pressure gauge, our temperature gauge, our voltage gauge, our RPM gauge, which is controlled electronically by the PCM, and our fuel gauge and speedometer. Everything looks okay. We're now going to check our horn operation, our high beams, our low beams, our spotlight, our turn signals. Go around back and check all of our lights as well, our brake lights, and our turn signals. Now that the bike has been warmed up, we can now check the engine oil. There are two ways that you can check the engine oil on this bike. You can either have it on a flat surface like I have here, or on the kickstand. I prefer on a flat surface because it usually provides a more accurate reading. We're going to take out the dipstick, wipe it clean, insert it back into the hole, screw it all the way down in, pull it back out. You want to make sure it's a good caramel color and that's between the right level. It is between the right level and a good caramel color. We're now going to move on to the breather tubes located in here. We're going to make sure that they're not cracked or dry rotted. Here are our breather tubes, here and here. Here's an example of a bad breather tube. There's cracking and dry rot. We are now going to go around to the front and check our steering. We want to make sure there's no grinding or noises. It feels smooth and it looks good. We're now going to check our tire pressure. The tire pressure on this bike is supposed to be 36 PSI. It is a good tire pressure. We are now going to check our tire depth. We're going to stick it here. It is good in the green. We're going to look at our dot codes, make sure that they're not too old, and our side triangles to make sure that they're within the wear. It looks good. There's no cracking or dry rot. We're now going to come around here to our controls. I want to make sure that all of our bushings are looking good, that it's operating smoothly and feels good. We're going to look at our fuel lines too, make sure they're not cracked or leaking, and it looks good. We're now going to come around here to our shocks. We're going to make sure there's no leakage and our boots look good. We're going to come to our belt, which is located here. Here is our gauge that we can use. You're supposed to have a belt tension gauge, but this is another way you can check it. You push the belt up, and if it's lower than the 3 lines, it is good. We're now going to work on the XR. We're going to look at our cables. Make sure that they're not fraying or ripping, and these cables look good. It's also important that you lube your cables, since it's a very highly used part. But not too much lube because it can attract dirt. We're also going to look at our throttle, make sure there's no binding, and it feels smooth. We're also going to lube a little bit in here. We're now going to check our brake fluid reservoir. Make sure it's a good color and at the correct level. You're supposed to replace your brake fluid every 2 years because it's very hygroscopic. We're now going to come down here to our carburetor and look at the engine idle speed knob, which is located here. This bike has a carburetor, not fuel injected, so it has this option. We're now going to look at our coolant reservoir tank and make sure it's between the lines. It looks good. We're also going to look at our radiator hoses and our radiators to make sure there's no fraying or cracking on the hoses. We're going to squeeze them too to make sure you can see the cracks. We're going to go up to the front rim and see if there's any play in the spokes. Make sure it's straight and make sure there's no cracks in the rim. We're now going to come around to the back and we're going to torque the rear axle. This is a very important piece to torque. We're going to torque it to 65 foot-pounds. It is torqued to 65 foot-pounds. I also like to wash my bike when I get it in so I can make sure that all the bolts are tight and properly secured. I also believe that you should torque every single one of your bolts. We're now going to check the suspension to make sure there's no binding noises or sounds that should make concern. We're also going to look around here to make sure there's no oil leaking. And if there was oil leaking, you need to replace the fork seals. We're going to come around to the back and look at the rear shock. We're going to make sure there's no oil on here. Make sure it looks good. This shock looks good. We're now going to put the bike on the stand to check the chain tension. To check the chain tension, you put the bike on a flat surface like this stand, and you get your ruler. You put the ruler at the base of the swing arm, and you pull the chain down and then up. If it's between 1 inch, according to factory specs, it is good. This chain appears to be at 1.5 and it needs to be tightened. We're now going to come over here to brakes. Here is a new brake pad. To measure the brake pad, you put the gauge here. It looks like it's at 5:30 seconds. A yellow, which would be time to replace almost, was between 2 and 3:30 seconds, and dangerous is between 0 and 2:30 seconds. Due to the time limit of 5 minutes, I had to rush through many different tasks, but I did complete the 25-point inspection. Thanks for watching and have a great day.